Thank you, and welcome everyone, and thank you very much for making the effort to turn up in such strong numbers this morning. It's my great pleasure to confirm Rob Walter as the new BLACKCAPS Head Coach. It was a thorough process. We're especially pleased with the depth and quality of candidates that put their names forward for the head coach role. And in the end, we felt conclusively that Rob was the right man to take the BLACKCAPS forward over the next 3.5 years. Without further ado, I'll open it up to questions. I'm sure you want to hear from Rob, not me.
Rob, why New Zealand?
Pretty simple. Obviously, New Zealand's been home for myself and my family for the last 9 years. I feel very blessed to have been able to call South Africa my home and now New Zealand. So also had an amazing opportunity to coach South Africa, and now to be able to coach New Zealand. Very much a dream come true. Pretty simple.
So the family has stayed here right through?
Yeah, we've been here all along. So my youngest son's born in New Zealand, and my eldest has been 8.5 of his 9 years on this planet has been in New Zealand. So yeah, as I said, for myself and family is home, and had 2 homes, and they've only had 1, so it's good.
How much did it help? How much did it help you in the process that you've coached here? Quite a lot.
Oh, it's massively important, I think, just to understand, the cricket culture as well as the broader culture, understanding how things operate here and getting a real sense and lay of the land from a cricket point of view, and how to coach in a different environment, having grown up in South Africa, obviously. So having those experiences with Otago and CD and New Zealand A along the way has been awesome, but I think a great sort of grounding experience for me in terms of, this next step.
And just on that, from our perspective on the panel, when we were assessing the candidates, Rob's background and knowledge over his 9 years in New Zealand was material to us in terms of his head coach experience at Otago and Central Districts. He's also was the head coach for New Zealand A team, so he has very strong understanding of the New Zealand cricket system, and in fact coached a number of the players that are in the BLACKCAPS today. So his deep relationships and feedback from players were particularly strong about the quality of his interpersonal skills, planning, and vision for this team going forward.
Did you always want to coach all 3 formats at an international level?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I always wanted to do that.
Rather than just white ball?
Absolutely. I mean, look, for me also, I'm a purist as well, so Test cricket has always been, important to me, the longer format of the game. Love that format of the game. I certainly agree with Kane in saying it's the soul of cricket. And so to be able to, to go back to coaching the longest format's been amazing. So to do all 3, certainly looking forward to it.
Rob, something that a lot of fans are probably wondering is how you're planning to beat Australia more often, something the BLACKCAPS have obviously struggled with over the years.
Still a way away, but and a few things to do before then, and a few sort of marquee events, in particular, obviously the T20 World Cup next year. So, we obviously have a good idea of what we want to work on. I think we can't overlook, the work that has been done specifically by Gary over the last 7 years, and the team has been, really unbelievable. Some iconic achievements along the way. Developed a group of players that are now used to winning and being successful, are highly regarded in world cricket. So it's really to sort of build on that. At the end of the day, winning is just the end result of getting a whole bunch of things right before that. So it's just to build on that process, being aware of the things that we want to work on. But it's not only about that series. Of course, to win that series will be monumental for us. But we've got to do a lot of things right before then. That are just as important. So, and without getting too far ahead of ourselves, just taking care of the little bits before that.
Interestingly enough, that was actually one of the interview questions, and he answered that very well. He's got a few ideas.
Rob, with the timing of you leaving South Africa, was going for this job always the plan?
To be honest, they coincided more than it was a plan. Leaving South Africa was, specific to that itself, and not with one eye on this job. Certainly felt that I needed to, take care of one chapter first before opening another one. fortunate that that it did work out that way, and that I was able to put my sort of name in the hat for the job.
You mentioned Kane just before. Obviously, South Africa and New Zealand are quite similar in the state of the club v country split. How do you see that going during your tenure as Black Caps coach?
Well, I mean, first of all, to deal with the reality of it. Cricket is ever changing very quickly. There is a very high demand on players, into the franchise space. Specifically your sort of marquee icon players. Very high demand, and at the end of the day, rather than resist that, it's really to figure a way to sort of coexist together. But understanding that obviously the national team holds a very dear heart, and for the players, a dear space in their hearts. And to play for the Black Caps is certainly at the forefront. I know that. So managing that whole process, of course, it's becoming tricky for everyone. The Black Caps will always be the number one priority. Trying to create opportunities for players is a must. And we don't want to lose anyone, through that. We want to certainly look to collaborate properly, and as I said, coexist. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it is possible and it is manageable. And we'll always have the fern first, and make sure that stays the way.
So what can you do to make sure players remain Black Caps rather than going to T20 outfits?
Look, I think the reality is that the culture and the strength of the culture of the team is there. It is the way now that the players want to play for their country. We understand that if we allow the freedom and space for players to take these opportunities when they can, it creates a broader depth of players, for the national side, which we've seen already pay dividends. So managing that whole process will allow players to do a bit of both, but understanding we want to keep winning games of cricket, but the bigger the number of players that can actually do that, the more healthier we are. It creates internal competition. It creates a growing of our standards of cricket because there's more people pushing for the same spot. So there's a lot of positives to it. It's just about managing.
The South Africa side you left was known for playing quite aggressive, expansive cricket. Is that the sort of style you think you'll bring to this job as well?
I mean, I think the reality is that New Zealand have been playing very good cricket for a long period of time now. So I don't see my job as coming in to change things significantly. I just see it as sort of adding some strengths and some small little additions here and there. I think essentially you play, as a byproduct of what your identity is, and that's also down to the type of players and the way that they see the game. Ultimately, it's about creating the environment for the players to be, to play their best game for their country. So, that will essentially potentially result in a more aggressive type of style here and there. But we know the game it's not only about aggression; it's about understanding, when to make those plays and when the game requires something different of you. So again, I don't see a huge overhaul of cricket. There's no need for it. If you look at just the statistical measurement of the Black Caps, they're up there with the best in the world. So we want to keep evolving our game because the game is evolving. It doesn't stand still ever, So we need to move with that and potentially move ahead of it in some spots.
Have you reached out to any of the players on the sort of casual playing agreements yet?
No, we haven't got to that point. This was the first step in that process, and we'll get into that now.
And just on Gary Stead, how much, as someone who's coached against Gary, how much respect do you have for the job he's done with this team for the better part of a decade?
You can't not but massively respect what he's achieved. As I said, there's some iconic achievements along the way. And beyond just the winning, just the way that the team has grown, the way the team is perceived in the public eye, the way that the team is perceived in the international space, having been on the other side of the rope. He's got to take a lot of credit for that. He's part of a sort of a timeline that has seen the game grow in New Zealand. So massive respect to him. Certainly will, sort of tap into his knowledge where possible, and then build on what's already been created.
Have you spoken to Gary?
Not yet.
Roger, how much thought was given to splitting the red ball and white ball roles?
A lot of thought. We had an open mind, and in reality, we wanted to sort of get a better understanding of the applicants, their views. But in the end, we felt that given Rob's skill set and where the game's heading at the moment, and the importance of really crisp messaging for players, especially if they're off doing T20 franchise cricket. So when they come back into the environment, you don't get mixed messages from different coaches. And dare I say, the international game, potentially there's a little less cricket from a bilateral sense, so probably coming together as one coach rather than splitting the format seemed to make sense.
How close was Shane Bond?
I'm not going to get into particular applicants, as I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Was he disappointed not to get the role?
Same answer.
What about the composition of the assistants, coaches? Have you sorted that out yet?
The existing support staff, including assistant coaches, are contracted, so there's nothing to sort out at this stage.
Rob, I mean, what does success look like for this team?
Look, obviously there's the ultimate thing that people dream of, and that's lifting a World Cup trophy. Obviously, the Black Caps have won the Test match, and so that's already in the cabinet. So to take that extra step in the shorter form of the game is definitely one of the key priorities. But beyond that, I think it's important to appreciate that we want to keep growing the game in New Zealand. We want more people to want to play the game. We want to grow, the aspiration aspect of playing cricket and the players that the kids look up to. So there's growing the game. It's making the fans proud of the type of game that we play. And I think that's there, but it's just continue to grow that. Cricket is under pressure from a sport point of view from other sports in the world, and it's certainly our responsibility to keep growing cricket and keep growing these players and who they are. So that's a key priority for us. And then along the way, this next 3.5 years, I mean, you couldn't get a better phase of cricket certainly for the Black Caps. I mean, the content in every year is there. World events, as you've spoken about. The Test series against Australia over that period of time. That hasn't been experienced for a very long time. So this group of players has access to a 3.5 year period that potentially won't look like that again. Certainly while they're playing the game. So, I mean, there's so much to be excited about. So much for these players to be excited about, and for us as staff. So, at the end of the day, in 3.5 years' time, we can look back and see that we've left a legacy for the game, be that trophies in the cabinet, but also where the game stands as a sport in this country. I think we'll be pretty proud if that's the case.
How do you assess the players that are now coming through and becoming international regulars?
I think there's a wonderful group of players. Nice broad skill set. You've got your old seasoned professionals who have got better and better, and the game has pushed them to evolve. And then you've got a sort of a younger group of players that have sort of come in behind them and grown their own games. And so I think if you look at a group of players, it's an exciting group of players. I mean, ultimately, they wouldn't have achieved the results that they had if they weren't strong already, and didn't have a broad skill set that covers. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting to be able to get on the tools with a group of players, keep looking to grow, keep looking to get better, and hopefully as a process of that, just continue the success.
Any more South Africans looking to come to live here and play maybe for New Zealand, Rob?
Certainly,
You've had the feelers out?
That's not my priority. I'll certainly focus on what's here before anything else.
And Roger, I know you can't talk about individual candidates, but were you impressed with the quality of applicants you received?
Absolutely.
Would you like to elaborate?
Well, we took it down to a short list of 4, and I could say any of those 4 candidates would have done the job very well. In the end, it came down to a final interview with 2, and both were exceptional candidates. But Rob just stood slightly ahead.
Even though Rob has obviously coached here a lot, and given his South African background, did you appreciate or look into that South African type edge that he might give this team?
Yeah, good question. I think there was that sort of steely bit to him. There's a soft interpersonal skill set that he delivers, but those of us that know the South African psyche, there is that sort of inner steel that may or may not be helpful down the track.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Roger. Rob.